Maybe you clicked out of curiosity, or maybe, without realizing it, you were looking for a quiet spot, a place where words arrive slowly, and silence is part of the conversation too. I wrote this story gently, like stitching together memories, pain, and small discoveries, hoping that at some point, you might see a piece of yourself in it. If you do, even for a moment, stay. Listen as long as you can, and if you feel like it, leave a little sign, a comment, a like, a share. Nothing big. Sometimes just saying "I'm here" quietly changes everything. The morning started bright, almost too bright for my nerves. I was in the nursery, gently dressing my 10-month-old daughter, Emma, in a soft lavender romper. Her tiny curls bounced as I brushed them lightly, and her little hands clutched her favorite teddy bear like it was a lifeline. She giggled without even realizing it, dimples forming instantly, her whole face lighting up the room. I felt a swell of pride, but also a pinch of anxiety. Today was our first full family portrait in years, and I already knew it wasn't going to be simple. Across town, at my parents' estate, the scene was very different. My sister Lacey, freshly returned from Paris with her fiancé, was fussing over her white silk dress in the mirror, making sure the pastels coordinated perfectly with the living room set. Mom hovered behind her, inspecting every fold, her eyebrows tight, her lips pressed in that familiar way that always signaled judgment. Dad was busy with the photographer, checking angles, lighting, even the position of the antique couch. They wanted it perfect, the kind of shot that could belong in a glossy lifestyle magazine. Back in the nursery, I adjusted Emma's romper and tightened the tiny straps of her little shoes. I couldn't help but smile at her tiny fingers curling around the bear's soft paw. She wiggled in my arms, squealing with delight, and I imagined the family photo, a happy, chaotic little scene with her in the center. But then the thought hit me, and my stomach sank. My mom had already made her preference clear. I glanced at the clock. It was almost time. My heart beat faster as I realized what would happen when we arrived. At the estate, Mom's gaze would fall on Emma, sharp and calculating, while Dad would be lost in the logistics of the perfect shot, and Lacey, oh Lacey, would smirk in that confident, slightly cruel way she always did when she knew she was in, and I wasn't. I carried Emma to the car, her soft giggles filling the space between us. "Are you ready for a little adventure?" I whispered, brushing a curl from her forehead. She smiled, her tiny hands still clutching the teddy bear. When we pulled into the driveway, everything became immediate and tense. Mom spotted us first. Her eyes flicked up, sharp, assessing. No warmth, no recognition, just that familiar glint of disapproval. "You brought the baby," she said, flat and deliberate, like stating a fact she wished were otherwise. I forced a laugh, trying to soften the moment. "Of course, she's family, isn't she?" Mom didn't smile, not even a twitch. Dad waved at me distractedly, barely acknowledging our arrival, absorbed in arranging the lighting and instructing the photographer. Lacey turned her head just enough to see me holding Emma, and a small, dismissive smirk played across her lips. "Oh, come on," she said lightly, as if it didn't matter at all. "She's not going to remember." And just like that, the first invisible wall went up between us. My heart sank, a little ache for my daughter, my family, and for the first time in a long while, for myself. As soon as we stepped into the sunlit living room, the photographer's camera clicked and whirred, testing angles and shadows. I carried Emma close, hoping to find a place where we could blend into the background. But then my mom's voice cut sharply through the air. "Actually, maybe you should take her back to the car. She's affecting the symmetry of the shot." I froze, clutching Emma a little tighter. My heart thumped painfully. Symmetry? My own daughter, my presence being reduced to a visual inconvenience. Emma looked up at me, gurgling softly, oblivious, and for a split second, I wanted to protest, to tell my mother that she wouldn't erase us. But Dad was already arranging chairs and lighting, entirely focused on balance and composition. The antique couch had to be perfect. Every line, every fold, every angle meticulously inspected. Lacey stepped into the center of the room. The white of her dress seemed almost luminous under the morning light. Her hair perfectly styled, her smile confident but restrained. In that instant, she owned the room, not aggressively, but effortlessly. Every parent, every detail seemed to orbit around her. I stood frozen, watching as my daughter's tiny face pressed against my shoulder, looking back at the chaos with innocent curiosity. I felt a dull ache, the kind that spreads quietly, consuming your chest without making a sound. My own presence was being erased. Emma, my beautiful little girl, was being carried away, physically and symbolically, out of the photograph. Through the lens of the photographer, everything was just perfect. Lacey in the center, Mom adjusting curtains, Dad checking shadows. I felt like a ghost, a faint blur at the edge of a tableau that was never meant to include us. And then I caught Lacey's reflection in the polished floor, her eyes briefly flicking toward me, wide with a mixture of pride and mild surprise. She hadn't expected it to feel this good, the subtle power of being at the center, of shaping the family's image, of knowing she could bend even my presence to the edge of irrelevance. The shutter clicked, again and again. The room echoed with the sound of permanence, freezing a family that no longer included me and Emma. Every image, every frame, a reminder of absence. I felt my chest tighten, a sharp pang of grief for the simple act of being seen, of belonging. Lacey adjusted her posture slightly, a faint, triumphant smile tugging at the corner of her lips. I guess this is exactly how it should look, she murmured, almost to herself, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. The photograph would go into the family album, the wall, the website, and my daughter, my tiny precious Emma, would grow up seeing herself only as an afterthought in this picture-perfect world. The camera's flash painted the room in stark light, immortalizing the symmetry, the perfection, and our absence. 2 weeks later, the glossy print of the family photo arrived in the mail. I tore it open with trembling hands, expecting... what, exactly? Closure? Reassurance? Instead, my eyes locked on the empty spot where Emma and I should have been. Below it, an elegant, cheerful script, posted online by Lacey, no doubt. The caption read, "The perfect family finally complete." I sank into the kitchen chair, Emma in her car seat beside me, clutching her tiny stuffed bear. The words burned like acid. Perfect. Complete. Without us. My daughter, my presence, treated like an afterthought, or worse, a blemish to be removed. For the first few days, I couldn't bring myself to call, to text, to respond to any message. The phone sat untouched on the counter. I avoided social media, avoided the neighborhood, avoided them. Silence became a shield. Anger simmered quietly, building a slow, steady heat beneath the skin. But pain transformed. Slowly, anger sharpened into clarity. Hurt mutated into resolve. I began to research. Not just retaliation. No, this wasn't about petty revenge. This was about being seen, being acknowledged, being impossible to erase. I scoured websites for billboard companies, considered op-eds, studied public campaigns, imagining ways the world could witness our story. Each idea stoked the fire within me. I pictured a billboard overlooking the main highway, Emma's smiling face beside mine. A headline that screamed, without irony, "You can't erase us." It was audacious. It was brazen. It was exactly what I needed. I traced their social media accounts, noting patterns, likes, family friends. Every post, every photo, every curated perfect moment became a blueprint. I wasn't just planning. I was gathering evidence, plotting a public reclamation of what had been taken from us. By the end of the second week, I felt a strange calm. The slow burn of rage had solidified into something more potent: determination. Emma cooed beside me, her tiny hand reaching for mine, and I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for her. No symmetry, no curated perfection, no caption-perfect image would ever dictate the narrative of our lives again. For the first time since that morning in the living room, I smiled. Not the polite, restrained smile they expected. A real, steady smile. The kind that carries the knowledge that you are rising, that you are preparing, that you will not be invisible again. No one can erase us anymore. I spent the next few days on calls that made my stomach churn with excitement. Billboard agencies, photographers, designers. Names and numbers blurred together as I explained my vision over and over. I need something bold, unmistakable, visible from the main street, near their neighborhood. The agent's pause didn't bother me. They were just measuring how serious I was. Serious enough to pay for a full-sized 2-week display overlooking the cul-de-sac where Lacey and the family lived. I wanted authenticity, not staged perfection. No pristine studio lights, no artificial smiles. Just us. Emma on our worn couch, her tiny fingers gripping a stuffed bear. Her purple romper wrinkled but vibrant, the throw blanket rumpled beneath her. Behind her, the sunlight spilling across. Even the backyard got a shot. A tiny patch of green lawn where Emma had first taken steps. It was subtle, but powerful. Our story was in every detail. Meanwhile, rumors started circulating. Friends of Lacey's caught wind of my plans and mentioned it casually during brunches or in passing messages. I could almost hear Lacey's sharp intake of breath through the grapevine. "Mom's up to something." I imagined her pacing in her white-bloused pencil skirt perfection, heart skipping. Would she understand the scale of what was coming? Probably not. But I wanted her to feel it before the world did. I printed mock-ups, shifted colors, tweaked captions. "You can't erase us" wasn't just a line. It was the anchor of the campaign, the phrase every passerby would see, the truth they could no longer ignore. By the end of the week, everything was lined up. Agency contracts signed, photographer briefed, shot scheduled. Emma's tiny giggles bounced off the walls as I staged our real living room corner for a test photo, and I realized this wasn't just a plan. This was a movement, a statement that was about to go public. A plan meticulously crafted, impossible to ignore. And somewhere, I imagined Lacey catching the wind of it, heart sinking. Soon, she would understand what it meant to be invisible no more. The morning sunlight spilled through our living room windows, catching the golden strands of Emma's hair as I cradled her in my arms. The blanket on the floor was frayed, the grass patch outside our window slightly patchy. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Emma laughed, a pure, uninhibited sound, and I couldn't help but laugh with her. Her little fingers clutched her purple romper, the stuffed bear tucked under her arm. Every giggle, every tiny movement, felt like a small rebellion against the invisible lines drawn by Lacey and my parents. I held the camera at arm's length at first, framing us with care. Blanket, sunlight, grass, Emma's curls bouncing as she wriggled. "This is my real family," I whispered under my breath, imagining it emblazoned beneath the photo in bold letters. And soon, it would be, on the billboard overlooking the street near their house. Each shot captured not just an image, but a declaration. The warmth, the imperfection, the honesty. It was ours. No symmetry obsession, no forced smiles, no white-gloved control. Just real life, raw and unfiltered. As I pressed the shutter, a quiet satisfaction settled over me. For once, I wasn't the erased one. I wasn't the background. Emma's laugh echoed in the room, mingling with the sunlight, and I felt it. The power of being visible, undeniable, unstoppable. Somewhere in the distance, I imagined Lacey and my parents, obsessed with their perfect compositions, seeing the billboard in their mind before I even had to hang it. And it struck me how different our worlds had become. My joy wasn't measured by approval, by symmetry, or by anyone's standard. It existed, radiant, unshakable, ours. In that simple sunlit moment, cradling Emma and capturing our life exactly as it was, I realized I had reclaimed something they could never take away. Our truth, our family, our happiness. It was just past sunrise when the first joggers noticed it. A massive 20-foot billboard, glaringly bright, right along the walking path my parents took every morning. Mom froze mid-step, her coffee cup slipping from her fingers and shattering on the sidewalk. Dad's jaw tightened as he stared, a mixture of disbelief and panic crossing his face. The symmetry-obsessed, picture-perfect image they so carefully curated? Gone. Replaced with me, cradling Emma, laughing under the sun. Bold letters beneath. This is my real family. Lacey stood there, her mouth opening and closing as if to speak, but no words came out. She tried anyway. I mean, it's just... But every excuse sounded hollow, even to her. For the first time, no one was nodding along, no one validating her position in the family hierarchy. Neighbors stopped their morning routines. A man on a bicycle leaned on his handlebars, staring. Some drivers slowed, pulled out phones, snapping photos. Murmurs spread down the street. The air buzzed with a mix of shock, curiosity, and amusement. Mom's expression shifted from stunned to something more primal. Powerlessness. Dad's fists clenched, but there was nothing he could do. In that moment, the carefully maintained image of control crumbled in public view. And Lacey? She finally looked at me, not directly, but at the image of Emma and me smiling freely. Her pride faltered. Her influence shrank. It wasn't private anymore. Everyone could see. Everyone could judge. For a fleeting second, the street felt like a stage, and they were performers caught off guard by the script I'd written. The erasure, the subtle cruelty, it had been exposed. Publicly, indisputably. By the next morning, the billboard wasn't just on the street, it was everywhere. Photos flooded social media, tagged locations, friends sharing screenshots. Within hours, hashtags like #RealFamily and #MomandMe were trending. Notifications blew up my phone. Messages from strangers appeared almost simultaneously. I thought I was the only one. My daughter's stepmom always sidelines me. Your photo made me cry. Thank you for showing the truth. I've been estranged from my family for years. Seeing this, it feels like someone finally sees me. Scrolling through, I saw the faces of women holding their children, sharing their own stories of invisibility, of being erased, of quiet resilience. Each post, each comment, echoed my own pain and my determination. Even more surprising, people I didn't know personally were sending heartfelt notes of encouragement. You are not alone. Keep going. Your daughter is lucky to have you. That chorus of empathy was overwhelming. I sat there, cradling Emma, reading line after line, feeling tears prick my eyes. For the first time, I realized my grief wasn't just mine anymore. It had transformed. My story, the one they tried to suppress, had become everybody's story. In that moment, power shifted. Pain turned into connection. Anger turned into community. The voice I thought was small, confined to our family drama, now had reach, resonance, and weight. And for the first time, I truly felt that I was not alone. Not ever. The phone rang just as Emma was finishing her morning bottle. The name on the screen made my heart skip. Grandma. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then answered. On the other end, her voice cracked. I saw the billboard this morning. I didn't know it would hit me like this. She paused, a sob catching in her throat. I could hear the gentle hum of her kitchen in the background, the familiarity grounding me. You've grown into such a strong woman. I see now. You don't need anyone's permission to be proud of your family. Not him. Not her. Not anyone. Tears welled up in my eyes. For months, I'd felt erased, unseen, dismissed by my own family. And yet here she was, my mother's mother, reaching through generations to remind me that love wasn't conditional. That family wasn't defined by perfection or approval. It was by presence, by recognition, by heart. Emma giggled in my arms, patting my chest as if she understood every word. I let myself lean back, letting the emotion wash over me. For the first time in what felt like forever, the hollowness inside me softened. Thank you, I whispered, voice shaking. Thank you for seeing us. Always, she replied, her voice steady now, full of warmth. Always. In that instant, the world felt lighter. The billboard, the hashtags, the judgment from my parents, they were still there, but none of it mattered as much. Because I had her, and she had me. And just like that, the bond that I thought was lost was alive again. Authentic, unconditional, and unshakable. The morning sunlight fell across the quiet suburban street, but the usual hum of daily life felt different. Cars slowed as neighbors exchanged whispers. Social media feeds still buzzed with the billboard images. The once envied perfect family facade was cracking right before everyone's eyes. Inside their house, my parents and Lacey sat rigidly, trying desperately to salvage appearances. Lacey's smile was tight, rehearsed. It's not what it looks like, she stammered, voice faltering. The community's judgment hung in the air like a thick fog. No one was buying it. Even friends they'd counted on for support began keeping their distance. My dad fiddled with his tie. Mom's hands clenched the edge of the table. Their confidence, once unshakable, had melted under the public gaze. They eventually showed up at my door, hesitating, as if the weight of the past weeks had doubled. I opened the door, Emma snug in my arms, and met their eyes. We wanted to talk, my mom said, voice wavering. I stepped aside to let them in, but held their gaze firmly. And then I asked the question that made the room pause. If the world hadn't been watching, would you have come? The silence that followed was deafening. No rehearsed excuses, no quick fixes, no justifications. Just the raw, unflinching truth reflected back at them. They couldn't argue. They couldn't spin it. Their control, their image, their carefully curated perfection, all of it unraveled silently. I felt no gloating, no shouting, only a calm, almost serene sense of justice. Because sometimes justice doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's in the quiet, in the reflection of one's own conscience, exposed and undeniable. Emma reached up, patting my chin, her small hand grounding me. And in that quiet, I realized the world had witnessed our truth. But the real triumph was knowing that we had survived it with integrity and love intact. The billboard that had stirred the neighborhood, sparked online debates, and quietly upended our family's hierarchy was finally taken down. Its removal didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a clearing, a space ready for something new. I sat with Emma on my lap, scrolling through messages from women I'd never met. Estranged daughters, mothers silenced in their own homes, people whose lives had felt invisible. I realized that the story I'd shared wasn't just mine. It was theirs too. That afternoon, I launched Full Frame Project, a small nonprofit aimed at empowering mothers and daughters, women erased or sidelined, giving them a platform to be seen, to be heard. A note arrived from my mom, well, my mom in a way I hadn't known, my grandmother. She sent a small donation, anonymously, with a card. I see you. You've grown stronger than I could have imagined. Weeks later, we staged a new photo shoot, not for public spectacle, but for truth and healing. Emma in her little romper, me holding her, grandmother kneeling beside us. The camera clicked. This time, nobody was cropped out. Nobody invisible. On the frame beneath the photo, a simple phrase, "Healing doesn't need a perfect frame, it only needs to be seen." And for the first time in years, I felt the quiet, steady pulse of peace, a calm closure that wasn't loud, that didn't require revenge or spectacle. The Full Frame Project went viral, not for drama, but for connection. Emails poured in, community events were planned, strangers shared their stories. My personal triumph had become a collective one, a reminder that visibility, empathy, and truth could reshape even the most fractured relationships. Holding Emma, watching her tiny hands reach for the sunlight, I finally understood. We hadn't just reclaimed our story. We had created a space where anyone, anywhere, could be fully seen. And that was a victory far greater than any billboard, any image, or any attempt at perfection.